Welcome to a noble society of young urban entrepreneurs sharing knowledge and building wealth. Welcome to the League of Hustlers.
The hustle is in your bones. It runs through your veins. It's that ambition to do more, become more. You can feel it. You know you have what it takes. You know you can build a life you've been dreaming of. It's time you live up to your potential. Welcome to the League of Hustlers.
Welcome back to the League of Hustlers. Ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is.
Ladies and gentlemen,
pull up a seat to the round table. You know how we do. A motivational podcast for the heavy hitters and the go-getters. What's happening? I'm your co-host, HT.
Yeah, and I'm CD Barnes.
This is the League of Hustlers.
Mm-hmm.
This episode today, we want to talk about experts, expert advice. Yeah, man.
Expert.
We want to talk about the stuff that really matters. We want to talk about making sure that we're positioning ourselves in the best possible way, and the quickest, fastest possible way to do it is with expert advice. And I was just on Facebook watching the homie GaryVee, right? He's doing a live series. Not sure how long it's gonna last, but he's doing this thing called Tea with GaryVee, right? Where he sips his tea and answers questions. You can text him at 212-931-5731 and ask him questions, right? Which is pretty cool, right? Advice from
Absolutely.
a true expert directly, you know. And we at the League of Hustlers, we submitted a question, right, or two, to try and get some insight. But we just wanted to explore this whole topic of seeking expert advice and the importance of that. Very important to seek expert advice, right? And we want to talk about three main things. Number one, like I said, seeking expert advice. Number two, narrowing it down and being selective with that advice and who you're getting advice from. And number three, being willing to actually execute the advice that you get, right? So let's jump right into it. CD, number one, we're talking about seeking expert advice. What you got?
I mean, seek expert advice. This is very important, man. I mean, the whole point of this is so that you expedite your results. All right. Chances are you're probably already consuming a lot of content, a lot of material. Okay. It's important though to get information from a trusted source, someone that you feel like is where you want to be, is in a position to help you get where you want to be. It's kind of like it's like
True.
getting your car fixed, man. I'm not going to take my car to my neighbor, to get any work done to it. I'm going to go to a place that I trust, with my car. Same thing with the doctor. You seen that commercial? It's a dude, a doctor comes in the room, he's checking on a guy, and he's like, "Hey, you nervous?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, of course, I'm nervous." And the doctor
Yeah.
says, "Yeah, me too. Don't worry, we'll get through it." You know what I mean? It kind of leaves you in you don't want to essentially get advice from a person that you don't trust. All right. So but just to get back to the point, seeking expert advice is mandatory. It's mandatory if you want to make it where you're going, man. You're going to need somebody that can offer you a different perspective and help you to kind of patch up the things that needs to be patched up within your operation and to help push you along. You could be working on 10 different things and you may be focusing on item 1 through 3, and you get that expert advice and they may let you know, hey, that's great and that's important. But where you're lacking is item number 5 and number 6. And that's what the
Right.
expert advice is going to kind of help you do, is kind of narrow it down a little bit.
Exactly.
And really give you a good tune up, man. And it is what it is. You don't have to take everybody's advice, but I think it's important to be open to getting advice, and then just going with it from there. It's
Right.
very important stuff all wrapped up in there, you know?
Yeah, and I'm reminded of a story that I can't remember who exactly said it. I want to say it was like Jeff Walker or someone like that. And he gave the story of how people will pay tens of thousands of dollars to know what Serena Williams' coach says to her when she goes to the sideline during the Wimbledon, championship match, right? Like people will pay for that. I can't remember if it was Jeff Walker or Tim Ferriss or someone like that. But people will pay tens of thousands of dollars to know what that coach is saying to Serena Williams in that moment, right? People will pay tens of thousands of dollars to know what, Phil Jackson was telling Michael Jordan on the sidelines.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
But when you actually are on the sidelines and you're able to actually hear that conversation, and the example that the person gave is that what the coach is actually saying is like, hey, make sure you bend your knees.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's something super simple, but super important. Right. And that's what I'm reminded of. It's like, from one perspective, we think we know everything, right? And a lot of times we think we know best and we want to do things ourselves, right? But that's the longest way to get there. That's you're approaching it in a roundabout way, right? If you want to know exactly what to do, you want to get there the fastest, we need that expert advice. You know what I mean? And so we need to be seeking out expert advice. And understand that advice that we get may not be what we think we need to hear. It may not be what we expected to hear, but we need to heed it. We need to accept it. Along those lines, that leads us into the second point about narrowing it down, right? And being selective with the advice that you're seeking. You don't want just anyone's advice. The thing about it with me is like it's tons of advice out here, right? It's so much information. We're in the information age. It's tons of information. You have YouTube experts. I mean, you already had blogs, you already had books, but it's so much information out here. Like you can, if you wanted to literally know how to perform an open heart surgery, you could go to the library and it will tell you step by step in some book, right? The same books that the doctors read. If you wanted to learn how to do, whatever, it's in a book somewhere, step by step, right? So we have tons of information at our fingertips. That's the first point. But the best thing to do is to find one person or two people, right, that you can follow. Why? Because you want to sift through all this information. You want to hone in on a couple of people. I would say no more than 3, right? Even then, that may be too much. But you want to be able to take that advice, right? You don't want information overload, but you want to focus in on 1 to 2 people. I would suggest up to 2, and listen to their advice, right? Block out all the other stuff, block out everything else. And get 2 trusted people, right, that you can trust and do what they say, right? And follow those guidelines, I think that's like super, super important. They're going to be the ones that are able to really connect with you. So my advice is to find a couple of people, right, that you can identify with, and then go straight for it, right? That's my second point. Now, leading into the third point, right, which is very important. Third point, you really, really need to actually do what they say, right? If they're saying to do something, you really need to do it, right? Just like in that example that I gave, that coach knew what Serena needed, right? And the main thing that coach knew that she needed was for her to bend her knees right at that moment. You see what I'm saying? And not only are we seeking out expert opinion and expert advice, but we actually have to execute on it. And a lot of times, like with GaryVee, what he'll do, sometimes I'm, listening, and I love the way he like talks to multiple different entrepreneurs and gives like these multiple specific examples, like, hey, you're doing this, you need to do this. You know what I mean? Hey, you're doing this, you need to do this specifically. Right. And a lot of times you can see the folks' reaction and they're kind of like, oh, man, like, huh? Do what? Post how many times a day or do what? And, do this how many times for how long? Reach out to who? You can see apprehension in some of the folks' face, and just in their body language. But it's like, hey, this is the expert. This is why you're talking to the expert. You don't know more than the expert. You have to execute on what the expert says,
Yeah, absolutely, man. Even with that example right there, like, post how many times, that made me go back to, the sports arena, when you realize like, oh, okay, Kobe was shooting X amount of jump shots a day. It sounds insane. You know what I mean? But what that it makes you an expert, you know what I mean? Essentially by taking that many shots, you need to kind of perfect the shot. And essentially that's what happens. If you posting content consistently, over time, it's not just about the quantity of content, but
Right.
what happens is the quality of your content should also increase because you're shooting that shot more often now. You're going to be able to realize now, like, oh, okay, this type of content actually hits the target. This type of content actually converts. So just those types of things, and it's that volume sometimes, and it is tough to execute those actions sometimes because you know people are operating on a whole nother level at times. A lot of times people think they can be successful by having a plan, getting it down on paper, but when it's time to actually execute the necessary steps, man, it's difficult. It's difficult sometimes. And it's important to just take the action. If you're fortunate enough to get the expert advice, follow through with the action. Just try it. Why not? Why wouldn't you? What do you have to lose? If you
Right.
really want to accomplish the goal that you set for, why wouldn't you just execute it? If
Especially when it's coming from someone who's been there and who has achieved what you're trying to achieve and who has seen, people achieve what you're trying to achieve, and they know, and they're telling you like, hey, do this, right?
right, and that's the importance of being selective with who you get your advice from because it needs to be someone that you trust enough to actually execute the steps that they recommend. If my neighbor tells me, "Hey, man, you need to, you know, shoot your shot like this," I'm taking that with a grain of salt, man. You don't play ball, you haven't been there, you haven't won any championships, so no, I'm not taking your advice. You know, and
You
that's
wasn't shooting
important,
with me in the gym.
right?
You
Exactly,
wasn't in the gym with me shooting.
exactly.
No.
So yeah, you execute. All right. If you're going through the whole phases of finding someone, make sure it's someone you trust, and that's someone that you feel is validated in that arena, and actually execute, man. Very important. If you want to get the results, you're going to have to execute.
Gotta execute. You have to trust that expert. That expert is there for a reason. They're at the level they're at for a reason, right? And that's why it's important that you choose the right one, but just understand, right, that if they tell you to do something, you have to do it. I can't tell you how many times that especially like when I'm going into new business opportunities, or if I'm doing something new, I can't tell you how many times that I've had to rely on expert advice, right? Versus relying on my own advice and my own understanding. You know, like when you look at the outcomes of both situations, it's like a stark contrast. It's a drastic difference. Like you can tell, right? And it's just like when a kid, right, would rather listen to their peers, their friends, as opposed to listening to their parents. You know what I mean? Like your parents have been there, they've done that, and they're telling you, and they want the best for you. A lot of times, this is the same. This is a parallel between you and the expert. The expert has been there. They want the best for you, and so they're telling you how to do it. They're telling you the pitfalls to avoid. And so all you have to do is follow that. And if I just look back over all my experiences, the ones that turned out the best is when I listened to the experts. Hands down. Hands down. Many people know my story. Like going from like when I first 10x'd, like literally 10x, over 10x'd, it was because of me listening to experts. Hands down. Hands down. Like I can't stress it enough. I went into new territories that I've never been in. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to follow expert advice. Right? And we're going to actually talk about this more, right, in season 2 with the book club, the Flip and Stack or the Stack and Flip book club. We don't know what we're going to call it yet. But this is one of the things that I talk about in my book called Before You Jump. Right? And it's building up that faith, and that faith comes from experts, right? Knowing that the expert that you're talking to has been through it. They've proven it. And so we can gain faith from that, from seeing them doing what they do, right? And seeing them accomplish what they've accomplished. There should be a certain level of faith that's built up in you, right? And from seeing their situation, they're no different from you. You can achieve what they achieve. We can build up faith from that. And then we can execute. So just know, if they're telling you to do something, if an expert is, leaning on you like, hey, you need to do this, right? Take it with a grain of salt, of course. But if you're hearing multiple people say it, right, really hone in on it and really execute. That's the main thing. Can't stress that enough. Cannot stress that enough. Execute. Execute on expert advice. And I just want to give a huge shout out to GaryVee, man. Like stuff like this is really cool, and stuff like this really, really helps, because so often, a lot of these gurus and teachers and durus, whatever they call themselves now these days, they don't, they talk a big game, but it's always like a product that they're pushing. It's always a book that they're pushing, a course, right? But people like GaryVee and, it's a bunch of others, but they're few far in between. But they're just here to help, and they give out free information, right? Because everyone doesn't have thousands of dollars to spend on a course, right? Or they don't need it. Like they just may need that one bit of information. Like with us, we talk about this a lot. Like we consume so much information, and we've been playing in this space for so long. Like, it's like you know what to do, but you just don't know what to do, if that makes sense, right? You know all of these techniques, you know all of these strategies, but you just need to know the thing that works, right? All of this stuff works, but what's going to work for you in your situation? And that's why I commend GaryVee for having, these types of sessions where he's listening to people's situations, and then he's giving you advice on your specific situation. And that's what we're here for too. If we can reach back to you guys, if you have a question, you have a concern, you hit a roadblock in your business, in your hustle, and you need advice, holler at us. Contact at leagueofhustlers.com. Reach out to us. We'll definitely, love to help you out. That's what it's about. Sharing knowledge and building wealth. Welcome to the league, right? So what's your challenge, CD?
The purpose of the challenge, first of all, is this is not an ordinary podcast, all right? This is the League of Hustlers.
Number one.
We want to give you actionable steps to do with each and every episode so that you can take this information and apply it to your life, apply it to your business, apply it to your career, and start making some progress, all right? We want to see you win. All right, and let us know how you're doing out there. Today's challenge is to go out and find an expert. All right, someone that you trust. It could be someone, that you know physically. That would be great to find a mentor. Someone already in your industry, already in your lane. That would be perfect. However, if you don't have that in your life, that's no excuse. That's no excuse. In today's time, we have it all. We have access to tons of millionaires, tons of mentors. Even if you can't necessarily reach out and call this person on a day-to-day basis, you can still consume their content via Instagram, via YouTube, and all these other amazing platforms, all right? Find somebody that's in your lane, in your industry, somebody you trust, somebody that if they actually gave you expert advice, you would actually execute it, all right? Don't find 10. You don't need 10 people. You don't want to have yourself going in 20 different directions, okay? Find a couple experts that you trust, people that you respect for what they do, okay? And start getting that information, soaking it up, and apply it to what you're doing. And we want to see you grow, man. Let us know how you're doing out there. But that's the challenge.
It's beautiful, man. Let's get to it. This is the League of Hustlers. We take action. We put in work. We hustle. We endure. We triumph against all odds. It's the League of Hustlers. Yo, what's up? Have you ever thought about starting a podcast and making money off of it? Well, Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. And best of all, it's free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. And in fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. Just go to anchor.fm/start and go and get it. Yo. Thanks for listening to this episode of the League of Hustlers podcast. We just wanted to remind you to subscribe, share, like, favorite, whatever you need to do to stay plugged in. It's a motivational podcast for the go-getters and the heavy hitters. What's happening? Stay in touch. And if you have any needs, hit us up at questions@leagueofhustlers.com. Also, check out the website, leagueofhustlers.com. It's a cool vlog of motivational videos. We're all about that motivation. You know the drill. Now go and get it.
You can do this. You are unstoppable. You are confident. There is no one like you. Nothing can slow you down. You are worthy. You are special. You know no limits. You are successful. You are prosperous. You are focused. You are funny. You are fly. You are driven. You are amazing. You attract great opportunities. You are surrounded by abundance. You achieve all your goals. You hustle. You endure. You triumph.